This is what Filmora9 looks like. You can record from a webcam, PC screen, which is what I'm doing right now in order to record this, or you can just do a voiceover. Once you have video or audio, they will appear, or you can drag them into this space here. Once they're in this space here, you can drag them down here where you can edit them, cut, paste, move things around. So I just recorded media from the PC screen in order to provide a little intro. And now I have this media here, and I'm going to drag it down here, match to media, and now I'll be able to edit it. You can't edit it while it's up here, but you can after you drag it down here. Now there are lots of different ways you can do things. I can detach audio, and therefore I can edit the visual and the audio separately. Often it's better to edit them together first, and the reason being is because there are often major parts you need to cut before you get into the little minor things that require you to detach the audio and make more nuanced cuts. I'm going to raise the volume by grabbing this line. So what I've done is I've put my mouse onto this line. You'll see a hand appears, and I've clicked it, and I'm going to drag it up. So that raises the volume, so it makes it more visually apparent where the pauses are. Now, if I press play, you'll be able to hear it. This is what Filmora9 looks like. And I'm going to instead just rely on the visual cues. So I'm going to clip here and delete. And I can zoom in, just as I put my mouse here to grab the volume, I'm putting my mouse on the timeline. And when I click it, if I move it to the right, it expands the timeline. So it's like zooming in on the time. And I'm holding the button down. So I'm clicking it and holding it down. If I move it to the left, it shrinks the timeline. So I could shrink it so the whole thing is small, or I can expand it so I can see details. And so when I expand it, obviously I have to use the scroll bar at the bottom to see the whole thing, but it allows me to get into the nuances of where pauses are or where ums are, that I can then cut out the ums and the ahs. And so when I press play, I can hear the I can hear the ah, and then I can drag this to the beginning of the or the ah, and you'll see there are little pauses, and you can cut. So here I'm going to cut, and you can eliminate, and there's so much pause here. I'm going to cut all the way to there, and you can decrease the amount of pauses. You just have to be careful not to over decrease the amount of pauses. And obviously, the more you do it, the more you get a feel for what is over decreasing and what is appropriate decreasing. People do respond better to faster narration than to slower narration. So it is good to eliminate those pregnant pauses as much as possible. Now, if I were taking this seriously, I would be listening to it in order to identify where things are, and after I cut it, I would go back and play it to make sure it sounds right. But right now, I'm just giving you a demonstration of how it's done, how to use the visual cues in order to make the cuts. And one of the benefits of this is it allows you to shrink the time of your videos and increase the likelihood of students actually finishing the video. Now, up until now, making cuts, I've been cutting before, cutting after, and right mouse clicking over the segment I want to cut and clicking delete. There are obviously other commands here. There's delete there. So I'm going to show you how that's done. This is the segment that I want to cut and delete. Now I could cut here and cut there, but if I do that, then I can't just click delete. I would actually have to be careful and click this piece here. I'll show you. So if I were to click here and then click there and then click delete, it clicks the point after the timeline, after the red line. So thankfully we have undo. I'm going to click undo. So since I've already made the cuts, I'm going to click this, make sure you got the dots there, make sure you see the highlights, and then you click delete. But there's another way. So I'm going to go ahead and undo the cuts. And that's a cut from front to back. So cut from the later part in time to the earlier part in time. And that's how you do it. Next, I want to go over how to add text to your videos. To add text, you click Tiles. If you want to superimpose text over your video, choose one of the tiles that has an image behind the text. In this particular instance, I'm going to use the text to clarify something that the audio does not clarify. So I don't want to choose a tile that looks like a title. I've already created a cut in the video and lined up the red timeline where I want the tile to line up with the video. Now I can drag and drop the tile to the red timeline. Notice it doesn't go to the same layer as the video itself, but rather the layer above it. That means it superimposes over the video. Now I can move the text or its background, but notice that they move separately. To edit the text, double-click on it. A text box will appear to the top left. In that text box, you'll have lots of different options that you typically see with text boxes. Don't worry about the text actually expanding beyond the background, because you can adjust that afterwards. To adjust it, you can change the font, or you can adjust the background itself. In this instance, the text box is coming dangerously close to covering the area that I want to clarify. So I'm going to move the text box. If you want to insert text as a chapter break, it's a similar process. Now you could take one of these that doesn't have an image in the background, in which case you have a white background or colorful text, or you could just grab one that does have an image in the background, and that just means you'll have a black background. Now when you first pull it down and you put it over in this top section here, you'll see that you've got this superimposed text over your video. That's not where you want it to go. You want it to go down here. This red line helps you pull it down to where you want it to go. The thing to be careful of is that you want to make sure this red line is actually at the beginning of where you want it to go and not a little bit too early. Because if you bring it down a little bit too early, let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to bring it down a little bit too early and notice that it cuts off a little bit. So you have to be careful of where that red line is. So I'm going to click undo. I'm going to click undo again. So I'm going to click undo one more time so that we can see how do we get it there? How do we get it at the right spot? Well, the way we do that, we can bring that line to the beginning of any tile by double-clicking on that tile. Then we can drag this tile to that red line, and then we can drag it down into the same layer. So when you have video synchronized with the audio, it goes in the middle. All images go above, and all audio, like music or voice recordings, go below. So the reason why I have audio here is I had recorded some video with audio in it, but the audio didn't come through. So rather than re-record all of that, because there was a lot, I detached the audio, deleted the audio, and then I re-recorded audio segments to go along with the video. And that's how I ended up with this. Now, when you listen to it, you'll actually hear that it doesn't sound identical to the previous section, but it sounds good enough for me. So now I'm going to edit this tile, and I'm going to call it Adding Text. And there we have a slide introducing a section of the video. The last part I want to go over is how to zoom. So in order to zoom, you click Tools, Crop, and Zoom. Now I'm already at the location where I want to zoom because I want to highlight something right here. So here I'm going to click Crop and Zoom. It's under Tools. And this box appears with this grid, and I can adjust the segment that appears in this grid. And then I click OK. Now it will only crop and zoom the footage that I've already isolated through cuts. If I haven't cut a clip out of the entire video, it will crop and zoom the entire video. So please bear that in mind. And with that, I think you have enough to get started.